Across the Pod NFL podcast. It's time for another team season preview. We had the Super Bowl champions last time. This time, we have the runners-up in the Philadelphia Eagles. Out with me, of course, a returning guest that you all know by now very well. Back with me today is Steve McGuiness. How are you, mate?
I am absolutely pumped. Pre-season has started, and it's not real football, but after like a drought of months and months, I will take anything I can get.
Yeah, I agree. And whilst I don't watch anywhere near as much pre-season football as I do regular season and post-season, it's still nice to have that option there. Even if you don't watch it, it's nice to know that it's there. And as I said it before, that when you see the pre-season starting, you know that the regular season is just around the corner. So, yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, really. I mean, obviously, last season when we did the preview for this, I was very, very pumped about our season. I was really, I was really positive about the acquisitions we'd made. I absolutely loved the AJ Brown trade at the time, but honestly, I think we'll get into it. But I'm just as positive, if not more positive, this year.
Yeah, I mean, you have every right to be after what happened last season. Of course, you won the NFC East, you won the NFC, and you were oh so close from winning the Super Bowl. And really, if the referees won their game, you would have won the whole thing. So it's exciting times. And in the off season, there's been a lot of incomings and outgoings. The main outgoings include Miles Sanders, the running back who has gone to the Carolina Panthers. Sidney Gardner-Johnson has gone to the Lions. Marcus Epps, a safety, has gone to the Raiders. Javon Hargrave, probably the biggest loss of all, has gone to the 49ers, your defensive tackle. Everyone's favourite quarterback, Gardner Minshew, has gone to the Colts, and Dominican Sue has left, and so far is without a team. And the main ins in free agency include Rashad Penny, who came in via the Seahawks, running back. Marcus Mariota, of course, star of the quarterback documentary from the Falcons, is now your backup. Safety Terrell Edmonds has come in via the Steelers. Wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus has come in via the Falcons. Wide receiver tight end Dan Arnold has come in via the Jaguars. Zach Cunningham, the linebacker, has come in through the Titans. And Miles Jack has come in, another linebacker from the Steelers, as well as you trading for DeAndre Swift, who came from the Lions. You've re-signed James Bradbury, Fletcher Cox, and Brandon Graham, to name a few. And in the draft, you took Jalen Carter, defensive tackle, 9th overall from Georgia. You took Nolan Smith, linebacker from Georgia, 30th overall. Then you took Keely Ringo, cornerback from Georgia, 105th overall. So overall for you, Steve, how have you found the offseason as a whole for your team?
So it's difficult to know where to start here. The Bradbury thing was the one that got me, because I remember we kind of much. I don't know, was it Bradbury, or who was the player we said we'd released? Darius Slay. We said we'd released him, and then we suddenly re-signed him. I know, obviously, we brought in some excellent free agents. I'll be honest, I was really glad when we got the trade for DeAndre Swift, not just because of the price we paid for him, because Swift's a running back I've always held in really high regard, but because Sanders was one of those players who I loved him in regular season, but he just so rarely showed up in the playoffs when it really mattered. And Swift's one of those players who he's never seen the preseason, because obviously the postseason, because obviously he's a Lions player, And if James Harrison's listening to this, suck it, Lions. They just and I felt like he was going to be one of those really great running back talents that was wasted on a bad team. So to see him come in and to bring in Rashad Penny, who for always he's an immense talent if he stays fit. You look at his seasons at the Seahawks, when he was fit, he was a superb back. But obviously his time there was limited as soon as Kenneth Walker showed up. So the Eagles' running game now, I think we always got a running back by committee, but now the two at the top of the committee are just, they look top class. Obviously, at wide receiver, I'm pleased we've brought in some backups for Smith and Brown. And Zaccheaus isn't he's not the kind of top class guy I would like to get in. He's the kind of like, here's your number 3 slot receiver. I don't think he'll see as much action as everyone thinks, because obviously with Dallas Goedert at the tight end, he's been picking up a lot of the short yardage passing. But the offense looks very, very good. But really, the free agency was good. We picked up a couple of good talents. I really want to talk about the draft, because I've spoken to you about this at length since the draft. I've spoken to pretty much anyone that will listen. But we had a fantastic draft. I mean, trade up and get Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter, resolves, I think, immediately our issues at defensive tackle. But to get Nolan Smith, an edge rusher like that, falling to 30. Now, I know there was some concerns about his off-field conduct, but the thing that the Eagles have always done is they've always taken talent like that and they've kind of polished them out. They've got them to toe the line. We don't you don't hear so many stories about Eagles players getting caught for DUI, Eagles players kind of beating up their wives kind of thing. Whilst the team and the fan base has a reputation, the actual players have always been very, very disciplined, and that's just part of the organization's culture. I like that we are continuing this pattern of just continually drawing on Georgia players. We have been doing that for a couple of years now, and it's good because it builds a kind of, the team already has that kind of inner strength from having played together before or understanding the culture of the previous teams. And it does make it a lot easier, especially for the rookies, to integrate themselves into the team. Obviously, the one thing you worry about in season one is can the rookie come in and kind of, can they come into the culture and be that kind of perfect fit. I think when you're drafting so many people from the same college, you already have that mentality. It makes it a lot simpler. But we were talking there about who we drafted. The guy I want to talk about the most actually is the third guy we drafted from Georgia, which is Kelly Ringo. Now, we have always struggled, I thought, at cornerback. I mean, I love Darius Slay. I'm so pleased we re-signed him. But this guy, keep an eye on him this season. He is going to be an absolute standout. I can genuinely see him being the running for Rookie of the Year. I've watched his tape at college. I've watched him in preseason. He's very reminiscent to me of Sauce Gardner, and I think we've got a real gem there.
Well, if he's even half as good as Sauce Gardner was in his rookie year, I think you've got a player there. I mean, I've never heard of him, but the Eagles, what you've done in the last few years, you've drafted extremely well. So I think Harry Roseman, I think you could argue now, he's one of the best GMs in the business, and I think he's shown that he knows what he's doing, and of course, you've had a lot of success as a result of it. But of course, you mentioned a lot of ins and outs in terms of on players wise, but one departure that I think could impact you, which is where our first talking point is going to be, is your now former offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, who is now the new head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. Of course, he was a big part of your success last year. Now, we saw Josh Allen drop off a little bit when Brian Daboll left him as OC. Do you worry at all about Jalen Hurts, the fact that he's had only really one good year? Do you worry at all about him, with Shane Steichen being gone? Do you think that's going to impact Jalen Hurts at all going into 2023?
If it was an external hire, I'd be concerned about it. But it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the kind of culture within the Eagles. The guy that's come in and is now the new OC, Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson arrived with us 2 years ago as the quarterbacks coach. So he's the guy that's been sitting working with Jalen Hurts pretty much since he hit the team. He knows Hurts' strengths and weaknesses. He knows the kind of play calling that Hurts likes. And I think he's a guy who will get the absolute best out of Jalen Hurts this season. I was really pleased to see that we didn't have much in the way of injuries preseason. I've seen a lot of we're only 2-3 weeks into preseason already. I'm starting to see players carted off the field, hamstrings here, calf muscles there. I haven't seen much in the way of injuries with the Eagles. There seems to be some, the most positive thing about them seems to be the strength and conditioning coach. But the other thing, Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, is 36 years old. Yeah. If you look at the three guys who are coaching at the Eagles, Nick Sirianni, the head coach, is the oldest of the three, and he's only 42. Yeah, these are guys who they've all come as a coach, and they've all been coaching for like 10 plus years. Brian Johnson started at Utah, then he went to Mississippi State, Houston, Florida. Joined us eventually in 2021. Sean Desai, who we've got as a defensive coordinator, obviously replacing he shall not be named. He's been coaching since 2006. He was at Temple, he was at Miami, Boston. He was actually at the Bears for a while. Then he went to Seahawks and then came to us this year. These are guys who they're not old, but they're experienced in terms of both the college system and, most importantly, the NFL. They're not rookies coming into their first job or first high-profile job. They're guys coming in who understand the league and who understand their specific roles within the league. So, do I think that the loss of Steichen is going to be keenly felt? It depends, I think, upon whether or not Steichen was viewed as the guy who was going to replace Sirianni, and I don't think he was. I think Sirianni's a long-term hire. And I think Steichen was always one of those guys that no matter how much talent he showed there, he was always going to have to leave to get to that next level, as he's done. I don't think I think he'll improve the Colts offense. But to be honest, having seen them last season, that wouldn't be hard. Although they're going to have some serious issues this season with the whole Jonathan Taylor situation. But honestly, I don't see us dropping off nearly to the extent that people suggest. And I say it's very specifically because Brian Johnson, who is the quarterback coach, has been working with Hawks for 2 years. He's now his offensive coordinator. He will tailor the play calling to the kind of things that favor Hurts. We'll see a lot of option plays. We'll basically Hurts will run for another 1,000 yards this season. The running backs we brought in, Rashad Penny and DeAndre Swift, I can see one of them getting 1,000 yards as well, because teams will either they will set to the outside to try and stop Hurts from going wide, or they'll kind of block the middle. And that's going to, Hurts has been developing year on year on year in terms of his arm strength and his accuracy. And we saw last year, A.J. Brown was off the chain. Devonta Smith had probably had his best year so far, and that's going to continue.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I mean, it's it's always hard to really say it until you see it actually come to fruition. But I think from what you're saying there, the internal hire, it sounds like they got a guy who knows how Hurts works, who's worked with him before, and I think you're right. That will probably help you going into the season. But of course, whether there's a trend in recent years of the Super Bowl hangover, and now the Super Bowl runner-up jinx has been called here. This could be play, but it could not be, because of course last year the Bengals obviously went on to Super Bowl, and they obviously went on and won it. Sorry, they lost it, but also next year they went back and went to the AFC Championship game. But there were a lot of teams who otherwise. So 49ers 2019, they made Super Bowl 54, 13-3 record, and then the following year they went 6-10, had a massive injury bug. Year before that, the Rams who made Super Bowl with a 13-3 record, 9-7. The year later, they didn't make the playoffs either. Panthers 2015, of course they lost it, 15-1 that year, 6-10 the year before that, and they haven't. I think they've only one playoff game since that. The Patriots went 16-0, went 11-5 the following year, and missed out on the playoffs. That's probably a bit of an anomaly. But for you, Steve, does that worry you at all? The fact that the team went so far, such a heartbreaking loss, having the motivation to go back. Does that worry you about this trend that's gone on in recent years with teams that have not only won it, but also lost the Super Bowl?
There's always one or two teams that they have amazing seasons and they just drop off the following year. Partly that can be down to players get to the big occasion, and then they start thinking about money instead of winning. And what you start seeing is contract disputes, arguments behind the scenes, players falling out with each other, and a kind of general breakdown in communication and culture at the back in the dressing room. I have not heard anything like that from the Eagles. All I've heard is from the guys who have re-signed, the veterans, the likes of the Brandon Grahams, Fletcher Coxes, etc. All I ever hear from them is they're hungrier than ever, right? All I ever hear from them is talking positively about the new guys coming in, the rookies coming in. I hear the rookies sitting there going, "This is great. These guys they understand that I'm here to take their position, but they want to win so badly, so they want to help me develop." And again, you said before, this goes down to Howie. Howie's recruitment. He tends to draft personalities as much as talent, and he tends to draft guys who historically are known for having really good, locker room presences. We have had the occasional, slightly more controversial individuals. I mean, we had Ndamukong Suh last season. We had Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who had his fair share of disputes when he was at the Saints. But again, when they arrived at the Eagles, you didn't hear anything out of them. All you heard was, they were quiet, they got their head down, they bought into the culture, and they wanted to win. And I'll be honest, on the two teams that were in the Super Bowl last year, again, whilst I still think Mahomes is by far the best quarterback in the league, I think actually maybe the Chiefs are a little bit more of a drop off this year. I've no doubt they'll still make the playoffs, but I can see them, dropping to like 10, 11 wins. That might still be enough for their division. It depends, because Burrow's picked up a niggling little injury there pre-season. That might affect the Bengals a bit. But I don't know. I don't worry about it so much for the Eagles, because I don't see that happening so much to NFC East teams, because they always have to stay super competitive. The last time we had a massive drop off was Chip Kelly. Now, that was less to do with the fact that we'd gone quite far in the playoffs, and more to do with the fact that a guy who ran a college offense found out that only works for a year. And that's, it's the same when he's gone to San Francisco. As soon as you start running a college offense, that's fine. You'll get away with it for a short period of time, and then the teams around you will adapt. Sirianni doesn't seem to do that. He adapts, he changes. The team constantly keeps the opposition guessing and has so many threats that it's very hard to kind of just, you can't really stack the box. You can't really sit deep. We are a run-first team, but we'll beat you in the air. And I think there's just too much talent there for there to be any kind of hangover. Also, when we mentioned the Rams there and their, complete collapse after winning the Super Bowl, one of the things about that was a team very much filled with veterans and high-priced kind of talent towards the end of their careers, whereas this Eagles team is very young and very hungry. I think it's one of the youngest in the league. So I have no concerns about that whatsoever.
You mentioned veterans there. Now, obviously there are a lot of good young players, but you still got Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, 4 big parts of your offensive defense. And we see it a lot of football where I think John Terry had it, where he had this amazing year and then suddenly it just drops off completely, a little swan song. Stephen Gerrard had it, and then look what happened to him. And do you worry at all that for those 4, I think most of them came back to try and do it again this year. Does that worry you that maybe it's almost 1 year too far for them, and maybe they had their perfect time to go out last year, especially if they'd won it? Do you think potentially that could be a problem in terms of 4 big parts of your team, not just on the field, but also off the field, if they have just gone maybe 1 year too far?
I think what I expected after the Super Bowl last year was whichever team won it, we were going to see a Kelsey retirement, whether it was Travis or Jason. And I think whichever one lost it was always going to come back the next year hungrier than ever to kind of, show that they were the Super Bowl winner. I think of the ones who've come back, I think Fletcher Cox was the one that worried me the most, because he's closer to being that, going 6 months and then saying, right, you know what, I can't do this anymore, my body's breaking down on me, than the rest of them. Kelsey has that. He has a certain magic about him. I noticed there's a Netflix documentary about to be done on him, which I absolutely cannot wait to see. Because he's the kind of character that, like, I don't know if anyone's watched The Quarterbacks on NFL on Netflix last week. That's a lot of fun. But you're going to put you're going to put a live camera in front of Jason Kelsey for a long period of time, and that's going to be gold. So yeah, I am kind of a little bit worried. I'm less worried about Brandon Graham, because obviously I feel that we drafted well. That if he kind of does drop off, there's people behind him. There's some good rookies behind him now to come in and kind of pick up that slack. I think Sirianni's a clever coach. I think Sirianni will actually use the veterans a little bit less this year, so that they are fresher for the bigger games and he can play them more. I think we'll probably see them play more in divisional games. We'll probably see them play less in road games against weaker teams. But no, I think especially for Cox, I think this is a swan song. I think this is win or bust. I think Kelsey, maybe, depending on how far we go. Graham, maybe less so. Lane Johnson, maybe less so. But yeah, this is definitely a year where at the end of it, one, if not two, of those players will no longer be Eagles. And when they retire, they will retire, with kind of, I'm not saying jerseys retire, but they will retire, never to buy another round in their life in Philadelphia.
Absolutely, the icons in this franchise. They were big parts of the team that won a Super Bowl. Brought a Super Bowl title to Philadelphia, and this is they get all the stick they want, but the fan base is one of the best in terms of being there for a team, even though they can boo players at times, stuff like that. It's a big sports town, so they brought Lombardi Trophy to Philadelphia. I think they will always be remembered for that reason. And you mentioned Jason Kelce's documentary. I don't know whether I watched it yesterday. Have you watched Johnny Manziel documentary yet?
No, I've caught highlights of it on YouTube, and everyone I know has watched it and kind of given me their feedback on it. I'm a bit loath to watch it, to be honest, because obviously Manziel himself is a very polarizing individual, and from what I've heard, a lot was quite sympathetic towards him. And I'm like, this is a guy who, most of what happened to him was self-inflicted. And I'm not sure when I want to watch something that kind of like paints him in a very positive or sympathetic light, given that the guy was an ass. He didn't have the mentality for the league. He didn't want to knuckle down. He thought raw natural talent would see him through. But that's not the case. It never has been the case in the league. Players with that mentality flame out in a couple of years. So I will probably watch it in its entirety at some point over the weekend. That's assuming I'm not playing Baldur's Gate. I remember I looking at I don't know if it's Skip Bayless or Colin Cowherd who said when Manziel was drafted that Manziel would be bigger for the city of Cleveland than LeBron ever was. That is the coldest of cold takes. But again, the signs were all there from his behaviours in college. There's a great story about Manziel being drafted in that Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones' son, actually had to take the phone off him during the first round draft to prevent him from drafting Manziel, because all the scouts had said he does not belong in this franchise. He will not make it in this franchise. But Jerry was utterly convinced that was his boy.
Yeah, I think Jerry Jones is a terrible GM. I think he's a good owner. But going back to the Manziel, I mean, I watched it the day, and I must say I thought it's amazing because he gets such an insight into what was going on behind the scenes. And I get your point. There's a little bit of makes him look good, but at the same time, he does own up to a lot of his problems. He owns up to his mental health issues. They show him he went to, I think it was whether it was high school, whether it was his college, it might be Texas A&M Hall of Fame. He had some sort of ceremony where he was doing that, and he was owning up to his mistakes there. And I think the takeaway is that he basically he's aware of what he's done, and he's aware that he wasn't ready. It sounds like he's trying to change, but he is still, hosting parties and drinking beer and all that. So I don't know whether he's changed that much. But the thing that struck me the most is, I won't spoil it too much, but his iPad hours was 0.0. So the iPad watching film, it was 0 hours.
Oh, so he was DeMarcus Russell then.
Yeah, hopefully not empty tape with him, but But Russell one is the best story I've ever heard. Was it the best stat ever? Who gave him? Was it Frank Reich who was one of the coaches, the coordinators at the time, who gave him that blank tape? But
yeah, and he said, "Here's your film for this week. Watch it. Come back to me and tell me everything about it." And he came back and says, "Yeah, coach, watch the whole thing. Yeah, I'm totally ready for the game." It's like, you're a lying idiot.
Right, let's head to the final segment, which is going to be our win-loss tie record. Now, if you're watching on YouTube or listening on podcast or Spotify, and you aren't aware of the process by now, we ask every guest to predict their team's record by going through each game and answering win, loss, and tie. Now, of course, Steve, you were here last year for the same segment, so the actual record of the Eagles was 14-3. Can you remember what your prediction was at all? Your record prediction from last year?
It would not be far off that. I think I had 13-4 or 14-3.
It was
I don't think there were too many teams I thought we couldn't beat.
Yeah, it was 11-6. So you were fairly close.
Okay.
I think it's only 3 wins off. So far, if I'm right in thinking, no one's actually who's come back on the show this year so far had the exact same bang on prediction. So I think there were a couple. Although there was Kagawa Panthers fan who had it right, but yeah, I think this year, obviously probably expecting a lot more than 11 wins. But it starts off in week 1 in Gillette Stadium against the New England Patriots. Win, loss, or tie.
Interesting one, because obviously they've just signed Zeke, so they have to me one of the best prospect running backs in the league in Ramondre Stevenson, someone who I absolutely loved watching in his rookie season, and I kind of predicted back then he would be their first choice back. I think the veteran presence of Zeke will actually help him, and I think it will help the Patriots. You can never, ever, ever underestimate a Bill Belichick team. So it's going to be a very tough one. I think the Patriots' problem, as ever, is at wide receiver and mainly at quarterback. They still haven't resolved what they're going to do about the Mac Jones situation. They should have done something about it 3-4 months ago. Either call that he is the guy for the franchise for the next 3 years or draft high. So also giving Mac Jones an ability to really get away from tacklers and the strength of our pass rush, that's a win.
Okay, so that is a win. Going into week 2, your first home game of the season against the Minnesota Vikings.
Now here's where my issue is with this. Our secondary has never been, to me, leading. We've never had a Sauce Gardner. I love Darius Slay. He's a top talent, Pro Bowler, and obviously he will be tasked with trying to keep Justin Jefferson in check. But again, it comes down to is it prime time, in which case the Vikings are going to lose because Cousins is going to choke, or is it a kind of standard Sunday afternoon kickoff with the Vikings maybe already having won the first game, in which case the pressure's off a little and they'll play a bit more relaxed. They will suffer from the fact that Mattison is now their number 1 running back and Dalvin Cook is left. I get that was a salary decision, but they will struggle to get the run game together for me this season, and that will limit Cousins because he'll have to target Jefferson more often and go through the air more often. So it's going to be one of the tightest games of the season for me, even that early, but we are going to win.
Yeah, and it is on Thursday Night Football as well, so that probably.
In which case, we're guaranteed. Anytime it's like a prime time thingy game and Cousins is playing, no problem.
Week 3 is a road game again. This time against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. Am I worried about a team that has Baker Mayfield at quarterback? No, not at all. We win that.
Okay, so week 4 is a home game, this time against the Washington Commanders,
who may have changed their name again by the time the game starts. To be honest, they actually, interestingly, they've had a really positive postseason and a decent draft, and that's mainly because they finally got rid of Dan Snyder. But they will be a team in transition this year. They still haven't addressed their issues at quarterback. They have, for me, one of the top 5 wide receivers, if he is a decent quarterback in the league, in Scary Terry. But again, at running back, they're going to be a bit confused. I'm not entirely sure what their strategy is there. We have running back by committee, but we know from the start of the season it's running back by committee. They tend to start with a clear number 1 back and then move to committee and then back to number 1 back and then to committee. Taylor Heineke is not the guy. It's a road game. I get it, and it's at that god awful stadium. So there's a very high chance of us getting a player or 2 injured, and a very high chance of them getting a player or 2 injured. But we should win that comfortably.
Okay, so week 5 is a road game against the Los Angeles Rams.
Now, I had a conversation with someone about this during the week, and we talked about the kind of Super Bowl hangover. This is a Rams team that will come back with a healthy, angry, focused Aaron Donald, and hopefully for them, a healthy, at his peak, Cooper Kupp. Now, with that, with Stafford at center, at quarterback, they have drafted well. They've got a decent 1-2 punch at running back now. I fancy the Rams to do well this year, and I have a horrible feeling that that's going to be one of those games that on paper we should absolutely crush, but we'll go there and we will, the rookies will suddenly find that trying to block Aaron Donald is a lot harder than you think. So it will require Hurts to be immensely mobile. If Donald gets to him a couple of times in the first half, I think the Rams will sneak that. So that could be our first defeat.
Hey, so then week 6 is a road game again, but this time against the New York Jets.
Oh God. What do I make of that franchise? Um, I like that Rodgers has done the honourable thing and said, I'm due 50 odd million this year, but I will defer it till next year so that you can go out and bring in players like Dalvin Cook, Randall Cobb. So basically, so he can bring in talent around him to give him the best chance of winning. I know the Jets they're not heavy favourites, but they are strongly tipped to fight with the Bills for the top of that division. That's actually going to be a really competitive division this year because obviously if Tua stays fit for the Dolphins, you could get three-way battle at the top there. I hate Aaron Rodgers as a human being. I respect him as a quarterback. My gut instinct says he was falling off last year, and we're going to see a Peyton Manning at the Broncos in the Super Bowl winning season version of Rodgers this year. But they're gonna, if they've gone into that game with any kind of momentum and they've won 3 out of the first 5, then they should win that at home. So yeah, Jets will beat us.
So that is 2 straight losses. Hopefully it continues in week 7, a game I'll be going to, unless trains go horribly wrong. Dolphins take on the Eagles in Philadelphia.
Yeah, well, you might be super hopeful for that. I got to remind you that the Dolphins are a terrible road team, and the Eagles are one of the best home teams in the league, not just last season, but over the last 10 years. There is something about the link that intimidates players coming into it. But I think if we come off the back of 2 losses, and that Jets game will be tough, if we come off the back of 2 losses, there will be a lot of motivation on players to right that ship. And I can see us winning that. I can see us really putting the pounding on the Dolphins.
Well, as discussed in the last episode, I am 0-4 at live Dolphins games. So yeah.
Oh, great! You'll be 0-5 then. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I hopefully provided I can get a few friends of friends. I'll be going to that game in Germany the week before, so it could easily be 0-6 by the end of that season. Well, my week in America continues as this time you guys travel to Washington at FedEx Field to take on the Commanders.
Yeah, we'll win that. I mean, Washington are just you build your team based on your division so that you can get 6 wins a year. We've built a team that's in beat Washington. Washington hasn't built a team that knows how to cope with Philadelphia. That's an Eagles win.
Okay, and then week 9 probably is your biggest rivals in the Dallas Cowboys at the Lincoln Financial Field again.
Okay, let's just push back there a sec. Our biggest rivals? I'm more worried this season about the Giants than I am about the Cowboys.
Really?
The Giants drafted really well. The Giants had a really good season last year. I really respect Daboll as a coach. I don't respect McCarthy as a coach. And I think that the Cowboys have very, very big issues that they haven't addressed in the offseason. So, yeah, and it's Cowboys at the link. The players will be fired up. The fans will be fired up. That's a home win.
Hey, so then you go into, after week 10 bye, into week 11, on the road to the Kansas City Chiefs. Of course, a rematch of Super Bowl 57.
Yeah, that is a loss. I feel like Sirianni's going to use that as like a tester. He's going to try and work out what where the weaknesses are in that Chiefs offense and defense for when we see them again in the Super Bowl this year. So,
okay, we are running low on time, so we'll quickly run through 3 games in a row. You've got the Bills at home, the Niners at home, and then the Cowboys on the road. How are you seeing those 3 games?
Bills at home to win, Niners at home to win. Cowboys on the road is probably a loss because we do poorly in Arlington.
Okay, so that means going to week 15 on the road to Seattle Seahawks.
Win.
Okay, so that means you're 10-4 going into week 16, which is a home game against a team you've mentioned just before in the New York Giants.
That will be the one for me that decides which of us wins the division, and it'll be us. So that's an Eagles win.
Well, that would be a amazing Christmas Day present for you. That will be on at 9:30 p.m. in the UK for all those UK fans listening. 4:30 p.m. if you're watching it in Eastern time. So yeah, that's a perfect day to post turkey. You're in a carb coma after all the potatoes and all the chocolate you've eaten. So sit down, watch the game, and hopefully you'll see your team win. Week 17 in Arizona, of course, where you played in the Super Bowl on New Year's Eve. So 6 p.m. for UK listeners to this podcast against Cardinals.
The Cardinals are absolute trash. We will beat the Cardinals.
Great. And then finally, week 18, you head to New York, which it might be on my birthday, if it's on the Sunday, at the New York Giants.
So what are we, 12-5 now?
12-4.
12-4. 12-4, 12-4. If we have beaten them at the link, it'll be down to whether or not they're still in contention. I think they will be in contention. I think they did the right thing in getting Saquon onto a one-year deal and improving the terms a little bit, because I think there's a slaughter right now of running backs, and it's sad to see. But they didn't address their wide receiver problems in the summer when they absolutely should have. So for me, we will go there. We will beat them, and that will probably knock them out of the wild card.
Well, that means that you will end on a 13-4 record, which has you at the moment as our joint third most optimistic fan. Only our Bills fan and 49ers fan with a more. It's only the 49ers fan with a higher record than yourself. So that is a positive outlook on the season. Now, normally we ask our guests who have records where it can get them to playoffs. We normally ask our guests how far they go in the playoffs. But Steve, you are coming on for our predictions episode come just a week before the season starts. So we're going to save that one for when you come on with Luke, who's going to be on for the Bears episode in a few days' time. And we'll save that for them to find out. So if you want to find out where Steve thinks Eagles will go in the playoffs, keep an eye out for that episode a week before the season starts, where we predict all the division winners, the MVP, Super Bowl winner, AFC champion, NFC champion, surprise team, flop team, and all those other ones like that. You'll find us all on our upcoming episode towards the start of the season. But that is where we'll end the episode for today. So once again, thank you, Steve, for returning to the show.
No problem. Just a final comment there for Luke. Justin Fields is just the Wish.com version of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I remember we talked before on WhatsApp that you aren't the biggest Jalen Hurts fan, I don't think. No, it's not Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields fan.
No, I don't. I think he's a super limited quarterback. I think this is going to be the season he gets found out.
Talking of Hurts, actually, I can't work out whether it's a 1 or 11 on your jersey you're wearing right now. Is it Carson?
It's most definitely a 1. Most definitely a 1.
Ah, nice. Are you wearing that to London when we
Absolutely, yeah. I'll be there for the Bills Titans game this year. Hopefully see you there.
Yeah, hopefully to meet you and Luke for the first time in person, which would be quite a nice experience.
That'd be fantastic.
Great. So that has been the Across the Pod NFL podcast, Philadelphia Eagles season preview. And we'll see you guys for our next episode, which will be the Indianapolis Colts. See you then.
Bye-bye.